Welcome to the Underwater Podcast, where we take a deep dive into the world of underwater portrait photography, cinematography, and everything in between. With me, your host, Brett Stanley. Welcome back to the Underwater Podcast. And this week, we're talking to underwater camera operator and photographer, Jenny Baumert. Jenny fell in love with underwater photography at the Brooks Institute in California, but quickly moved into cinematography. She worked on commercials and music videos, and just finished up shooting the title sequence for Netflix's Merpeople docuseries. We talk about shooting 1,000 frames per second underwater on the Phantom high-speed camera, how she made the move from camera tech to operator, and how drinking Timothy Leary's ashes with Susan Sarandon totally changed her visual style. Alright. Oh, actually, you know what? I just want to take a second to thank you, the listener, for supporting this podcast. It was something I started during the pandemic to keep me entertained, and I've really enjoyed talking to all the amazing guests I've had come on. But there is a downside to podcasting, and that is that it's a bit of a one-way process. Meaning that I rarely get feedback from listeners on how they're liking it or what I should change or do more of. In fact, it's a little bit like sending stuff out into the void sometimes, and I only really know if people are listening through looking at the statistics. So in saying that, I'd love to hear from you, whether that's an actual message or just by tagging or sharing the podcast on your socials. Everything helps, especially a review. And if you're subscribed via Apple Podcasts or Spotify, then even better. If you really want to support, you can grab one of our very cool t-shirts designed by illustrator and underwater photographer Joe Hodino from the web store at theunderwaterpodcast.com. It's such a cool graphic. I am wearing one right now. All right, so enough mumbling from me. Let's jump in and hear all about Jenny. Jenny, welcome to the Underwater Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you here, man. We've been friends for, many years now, and I think I've been bugging you to come on this podcast for many years now. Mm-hmm. So it's good to finally corner you and get you on.
Yes, I am finally doing it. This is my year.
Yeah. So let's talk about you. So you kind of do a lot of things. You are a camera operator, you're a DP, you're an AC, you're a water tech, you're a photographer. How did all the water stuff start for you? Where did that kind of begin?
So it began when I started attending Brooks Institute in Santa Barbara, and I think a week into school, I found out that they had an underwater class specifically for photography, not any motion or anything like that. And I was instantly obsessed. I had to take the class. You had to be at a certain year and a certain level to be allowed to take it, but you could audit it. So I did that for 2 years before I was actually allowed to take the class, which, gave me all the tools and tips to go out and try it myself. So yeah, I just, if I hadn't gone to Brooks Institute, I would have never gotten into underwater photography. I didn't even know it existed, I had admired underwater images, but never thought about how they got that image.
That's crazy. So had you had a love of water before that, or did it all just kind of start at the same time?
I've definitely always been a water child, for sure.
Yeah.
Always in the water at a pool or a lake. I grew up in Kentucky, so Myrtle Beach was our closest ocean. It was mostly lakes and pools, and I'm a Pisces, so naturally just, water sign.
Yeah, that's amazing. Were you always in the water? What did you do in the water when you were a kid? Did you just swim around, or did you kind of make up games and play karate and stuff? That's what
all of the above. We had tea parties underwater.
Nice.
Just me and my brother, we lived at the city pool in our tiny town. There was absolutely nothing to do. So that is what we did. Right.
So then when you're at Brooks and you saw this underwater classes, it must have blown your mind, right?
Insane. And the teacher, Ralph Clevenger, one of the just most amazing people. First of all, he's just so kind and so willing to share his knowledge, which is endless. He's shot for National Geographic. I wish I knew his whole list of everything he's done, but he's done a lot, and I owe everything to him. I feel like he's he just stuck his neck out for all of us. And we used to go on these really cool trips. This was like the coolest part of the class is towards the end of the class, I believe, end of the semester, you would go on a 6-day, 5-night boat trip where we went on this boat called the Conception, and we went out to Catalina Island, and we would stay there for 6 days. We would literally spend our entire day going on dives or free diving and just shooting. Everyone could come up with an idea and we would all help each other execute it. We would make costumes out of kelp and like sew them. Yeah, it was amazing. I did. My very first shoot ever was Adam and Eve, and Adam's giving Eve the apple. And I took like a strapless bra and some underwear, and I like tied kelp and sewed kelp to it, and it actually looked pretty good, and used 2 of the boat crew. They were just gorgeous people and they totally looked the part, and they were down. So we went out there and fought this insane current, and it was really wild, but we ended up getting the one shot, and it was really fun. That was like, after that I was hooked completely.
Yeah. So at that point, were you a diver as well?
I think I had so when I knew I was finally accepted into the class and allowed to take the class, I quickly hired like just a guy that did it personally. Like he taught on his own time and had his own boat. So he was able to I feel like I completed the class in like 4 or 5 days. We just every day, all day, we were just diving and practicing and taking the written tests and all that. So right before, probably 2 days before the trip is when I got certified.
Wow. So that's just in time. And then you're out on a boat for 6 days. Yeah.
That's kind of my style, like very last minute Larry, you know, but it'll happen.
So that trip out there must have been kind of like a playground, I guess, where you guys got to kind of, create and kind of and do ideas that you had whilst doing the class.
Yeah, it was amazing. And just seeing how everyone else just came up with these ideas and executed the ideas. First of all, just being on the boat for that long was a wild to me, like sleeping on a boat every night, waking up, having, all these meals with the crew and your classmates, and getting to just go kayak and go swim. Like it was a playground. We could do whatever we wanted within those days. You didn't even have to create if you didn't want to. And then every night after dinner, we'd all meet up and we'd have our computers out and we'd be editing together and kind of like showing our work and getting advice on how we could have done it better or differently. It was really amazing. And I had the class with some of the most amazing underwater photographers, in my opinion, too. So that was I was lucky getting to be able to work with them.
Yeah, just to be able to get, kind of learn from their skills and stuff as well.
Yeah, like who like Kiara was in one of my classes. I'm going to butcher her last name. I think it's Salamani. I'm sorry, Kiara. And Angelina Venturella and John Kelsey. These people are like all very successful underwater photographers at the moment. And I look up to them a lot.
So it sounds like a little summer camp.
Basically, yeah, that's what it felt like.
And did you guys have to have all your own equipment as well, or did Brooks kind of provide a lot of that?
As far as the scuba equipment, you had to have your own, but Brooks did provide. I think we had 2 Aquatech housings, 1 Aquatica, and I don't think we had any 35 millimeter with us, but everyone else had their own housings too, and they would share. So you really got to try out all these different brands and different cameras, which was also amazing. And strobes or no strobes, like it was really hands-on.
I think that is kind of invaluable and pretty rare that you kind of get that experience while you're learning, because there's not really somewhere you can go and just kind of play with everything. Like you can either rent a housing and take it out and try it, but for you to be able to have access to all these different ones for a week, that just sounds amazing.
Oh, it's unheard of. Even like I feel like film schools start you out it's very theory based for the first few years. And with Brooks, from day one, you had a camera in your hand or a light. It was just completely technical and fully hands-on. And that's what I loved about it. But I wish we had a program where every summer for, a week, we could get a group together and just go be at Catalina for, the entire time. That would be a dream.
Yeah. It's like a underwater summer camp. I think this needs to happen
I
somehow.
think we should. I think we just started it. I think
Yeah.
it's going to happen. I mean, that would be so much fun.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Just like a week of creation and helping each other and yeah, trying new techniques and stuff. Because especially through the podcast, I've come across so many different ways of doing the same thing and having, different results and different approaches. And, I think you can live in a bubble for so long, but then when you see how someone else works, you're like, oh my God, that seems so much easier, or the results I hadn't even thought of, so it's having that collaboration feel, I think, would be amazing.
100%. That's one of the reasons why I still love teching, just being an underwater tech. You learn so much. Every single person you work for, you have the opportunity to watch how they, trim the housing, how they use the housing, how they just use their own body to get these shots. It's really incredible. That's where I've learned the most, I think.
Yeah. So, well, let's talk about that. So how did you go from Brooks to actually working on set?
I think I got lucky at Brooks because I was one of the only people that wanted to learn underwater video in the photography class. Right. So I actually took the class a second time the following year and just mainly took everything we learned and just applied it to video. And so I feel like I was just a rarity there, and that kind of helped push me out. Like a lot of teachers would be like, well, let me get you on this show, or I know someone who does underwater, so maybe you can go shadow them. And it just kind of went from there. Yeah. And then, I did a lot of years of just really simple, like projects for friends, like nothing major. And then finally started getting pulled on to tech, like features and like union shoots.
Right.
Which was terrifying at first.
I can imagine.
Very intimidating.
Yeah, I mean I think that I found a similar sort of thing, and I haven't worked anywhere near as much as you have on those sorts of sets. And yeah, going from a small budget thing where you're kind of in control of everything, then to going on to a larger production that everybody has a job, and that's the only thing they do. Yeah, it's kind of confronting.
Oh yeah, and like the fact that if you make one mistake that keeps the underwater unit from getting the shot, that's like millions of dollars or it's just a lot of money on the line. So yeah, it's a lot of pressure, I feel like.
Yeah. So how do you deal with that when you went into these sorts of productions and you knew you were going to work on, a feature film or a union set? Did you kind of do homework? Did you kind of hone your skills somehow?
Oh yes. If I'm going to do any shoot, even today, and it's something I've never done, or it's equipment I've never worked with, I will study it inside and out. Any tutorial, any book, like anything I can find on it, I definitely study it. Also just working with being able to tech and have like an amazing first AC that also knows a Hydroflex housing, or if you're lucky enough to have a first, second, and a tech, it's just a lot easier to figure things out. And I think on my very first few shoots as a tech, being a woman, first of all, it was so hard to get there and have the trust. I think I just, sucked it up and just did it. Even though I was nervous, I just pushed through and still thought as clearly as I could to like prove that I could do it.
So what is the actual difference between an AC and a tech?
So they're two completely different jobs, but I feel like nowadays, especially in the US, we tend to combine them because of budget reasons usually. But a first AC should be specifically focused on the camera, and pulling focus, or just pulling focus, and your second can worry about the camera. Your underwater tech should just be focused on that housing and helping, the operator.
Right.
In my
so
opinion.
So if you've got your operator in the water, you've got your camera housing, and you've got your camera inside the housing, then you as the tech you're in charge of opening the housing, getting it kind of trimmed and putting it all back together, making sure it's watertight, and sort of everything about that housing is your domain.
Mm-hmm. And the cabling, everything, power for the housing. Yeah.
Which do you prefer? Do you prefer teching or ACing?
Good question. I AC'd for so many years. I love pulling focus. It's so challenging. not as challenging underwater because you don't have as big of movements from my experience. So it's not crazy pulls, but I think teching, just because you're closest to the operator, you can really see how they're holding the camera, how they're moving with the camera, how they're talking to the talent and directing them. Yeah. That's where I feel like I get the most experience when I like my goal is to be an underwater cinematographer. Like, so yeah.
Yeah, so kind of if you were talking about a career path to end up being the underwater cinematographer or the camera operator, then teching is probably the best way to get in, right?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of DPs I know that have never AC'd. They don't know sometimes anything about the camera. They really rely on their first AC. So yeah, I think teching, just knowing more about the housings and like how to trim them, even as an operator, I feel like that's important because a lot of times you either don't get a tech, depending if it's hydroflex, you have to have a tech basically. You can't do that alone. But sometimes you have to teach people how to do certain things. So if you don't know how to trim it and they don't know how to trim it or hook anything up properly, then, you know, it's not going to be a successful shoot.
No, exactly. And I think a lot of productions will not understand how important that is on an underwater shoot and how easily things can go wrong and take a lot of time to fix if you don't have people with the right experience.
Yeah, they don't know it until it happens, I feel like, until it hits them really hard.
Yeah, and then it's too late.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put my hand up as one of those DPs that doesn't know a lot about the camera, which is, you know, why I tend to work with you a lot. And it is amazing having someone who knows exactly what is going on. You know, for me, just my experience and my career, I haven't really had to kind of deal with the cameras. It has just been, you know, I get hired as a camera operator and then it's like, okay, I know how to move the camera. I know how to do the operation of it, but the setting up and the settings and all the kind of the tech side of it, having someone like you who knows that stuff inside out is invaluable. You know, that saves my butt so many times.
Yeah, and having that trust so you can be an operator and focus on operating. You don't have to like worry in the back of your head, well, is this set up right? Oh my God, that's my cat. I'm sorry. Gustavo.
Oh,
yeah, and that's actually one of the first jobs we ever did together. I think you were working with Kiara and you had me come on as like a tech, but also second shooter, which was awesome. And that was that like 7 years ago?
I think it was something like that, yeah.
Yeah, wild.
Yeah.
Wild. We've come a long way, Brett.
We have, yeah. It's been an interesting journey, I tell you. And if I do think back to that job, which we did, which was for
Supermodel.
Supermodel, yeah, which was I think it was Chinese supermodel kind of reality show. And they had hired me at the beginning as a stills photographer and then asked me if I did video and I just said yes. I don't know why I said yes.
As you should.
Yeah. No, well, I hadn't really done much of it then. And then it all just kind of blew out of proportion. And it was like suddenly we're dealing with, they wanted like, you know, 2 cameras under the water and, you know, we had to have a DIT and behind the scenes stills photographer and all that sort of stuff. And so, yeah, I kind of scrambled, reached out to Kiara and Kiara was like, I've got the person for you and introduced me to you. And you just kind of saved my butt. You knew exactly what we needed to do and you worked your ass off. It was incredible.
Yeah, I had a blast. And it, you know, started an awesome relationship. Like we've worked together on so many projects since then. Yeah,
totally. And I think that goes towards that trust thing of, you know, I know when you're on set, there's nothing I need to worry about. You know, like you're going to have thought of everything before I've even thought of it. So that just makes everything run so much smoother.
Thank you. That's awesome. I might accidentally burn one of your gels when you tell me not to use that gel, but that's about
Oh, yeah.
That's about it.
That's a small price to pay, I think. That's all good. But I think that kind of, you know, having fun on set and having people that you enjoy working with and also people who love and respect the water as much as you do, I think that makes so much of a difference.
Totally, because they're going to help you come up with ideas like during the shoot. Well, why don't you try this? Or I've done this before. This is how I did it. You know, that's always really, really helpful.
Yeah. And so recently I teched for you on a job and we had Soda Pop on set as well.
Soda's the best, everyone. Hire soda.
Yeah, and that's what it was like. It was like because you were shooting in the ocean.
Yes.
There was some pretty decent sets coming through that day, and just knowing that Soda had your back, literally out in the water out there, and just watching you guys kind of work together, and kind of you have people who know exactly what you're trying to do without even saying it.
Absolutely. I feel like working with friends is really amazing, and getting a lot of your friends on shoots to experience like underwater is fun, but having people with years of experience on you, in my opinion, is way better. Like I always want to hire someone who is watching my back specifically, that has like years of experience on me, just so I don't know, I can take their advice, and they've probably been through this situation 100 times before you, so they just know exactly how to act. Soda has worked on so much for so long. Like I just feel like, yeah, he knows what's going to happen before it's going to happen. So I trust him with my life, literally.
Yeah, and I think especially we work in a dangerous environment. Mm-hmm. Things can go from fine to shit in a second. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you've got someone who's green with you, if you have to show them everything, that takes time, and it's great to upskill people. But if you need something done in a second, having that person who's got the experience and has been in these situations before will just make that such a better situation.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then just even like having you there, I just love having people who, like you said, have the same love for the water, have brilliant ideas, just people that I really respect. I love having that team on my side.
Yeah. So speaking of an amazing team, there is a job that you did with Ian Takahashi, which was the Harry Styles music video.
Yes.
And I saw that music video before I knew that you guys had worked on it. Mm-hmm. And I went green with envy, because that is, a sinking room with a grand piano and all this sort of stuff. It's just up my alley. But yeah, you got to shoot that with Ian. Can you talk about how that all came together?
Yeah, Ian brought me on to tech the hydro crane. And I think that was not one of my first experiences on like a huge union shoot, but to that scale, I feel like we had 2 or 3 cameras in the water, and I'm not even quite sure who else was teching with me, but I don't feel like it was that big of a camera team. So It was just a little intimidating too, because I also I look up to Ian a lot. I feel like he is one of the gods of the underwater world, in my opinion, when it comes to cinematography. Just everything he does is incredible. Getting to watch how they, were lowering the set in with a crane, and I think there was a point where we had trouble getting the set down and getting the water to come out of the piano at the rate they wanted it to. So watching how they troubleshot that, and I think they just had to cut the inside of the piano out or something to make the water rush through as they lowered the crane.
Yeah, right.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Just stuff like that was amazing. And then anytime there was a moment of just rest, Ian would pull me over and, this is this light and this is what I'm doing with this. He's just very willing to explain his process. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah, totally. And I think in such a niche kind of industry, it's lovely that someone is willing to kind of to teach and share and help other people.
It's refreshing because, it's a male-dominated industry, and I feel like I've worked with a lot of salty men, where, they just don't want to see, I guess, maybe the next generation of people take over. I'm not quite sure. It's because I'm a woman. It's so refreshing and comforting when you meet people that are just willing to, help you out, give you some information, share their wisdom.
Yeah. Ian's great like that, and Pete Romano.
Oh, yes.
As well, just kind of really, they're having an amazing career, mm-hmm. and they don't feel threatened by anyone. So, they're more than happy. Yeah, exactly.
They're on the top of the totem pole. Yeah.
So, you mentioned the hydro crane or the hydro head from Hydroflex. Can you just talk about that? So that's basically an arm that the housing is connected to?
Yes. Yeah. And you can have that rigged on a boat for like tracking shots. The Hydra head can be like rigged to boats or on a dolly. It's great for tracking shots, especially for like Olympic swimmers.
Yeah.
I've definitely learned the hard way that you do not have someone pulling you from a rope along with an Olympic swimmer to try to get the shot, because it doesn't work.
So talk about that, Jen. What happened there?
Oh, so this was one of the shoots that really made me realize you need to plan ahead for underwater shoots, like when you have a crazy tracking shot. I think it was one of the first times I ever shot an Olympic swimmer, and it was for a Kroger commercial.
Yeah.
And I just didn't really, I thought it would be a lot easier. It was like, I don't remember what year this was, so I was still pretty green. But we ended up needing a tracking shot, and I could not swim as fast as this Olympic swimmer, even with fins and everything on. So they tied a rope to me and had 4 grips pulling me as fast as they could, which the speed worked out, but you've got your fins flapping in the way and all the bubbles coming from just your force into the shot. It was just, none of that shoot worked out. None of it. I think also I hadn't figured out buoyancy yet, like proper buoyancy. Right. So, no steady shots. I couldn't get to the level they needed. It was probably the only shoot I've really like totally failed at. Right. Like that was a fail.
Right. Well, so this is a good question too. And what I like to do with people is kind of ask them, what was your best moment on set and what was your worst moment on set?
That might have, and is this just the underwater world? Because if we get into land, that's just a whole other ballpark of disappointments.
Well, let's stay with the underwater.
Okay.
Yeah.
That shoot for Kroger was probably my worst one because it was just really humbling. It just made me realize I need a team. I was also by myself that day. So I need a team. I need to just plan. And anyways, my best shoot, my best shoot was something really recent. I can talk a little bit about it because of NDAs, but I got to go to the Bahamas. I got to shoot at the Atlantis, where they've recreated Atlantis in their whole, like their tanks. Oh yeah. They had so many species of marine life. It was incredible. I'm surrounded by sharks and rays and fish, and it was mind blowing. And it's going to come out for a new Netflix docuseries, I think this June. Best shoot in the world, best experience, best team. I learned so much. It was phenomenal. I want more trips like that, more shoots like that.
Yeah, I remember you speaking about it, and it just sounded amazing to mainly having access to that location as well.
It was insane. Yeah, I guess it does not happen often at all to like allow people to go in there and actually just freely shoot and swim around. Yeah. It was amazing. And that was a shoot where I didn't know anybody on the crew. And when I went to Miami to fly out to the Bahamas, I had to meet, my underwater tech, my first AC. We had a Phantom tech that day because we were shooting with the Phantom the whole time. So that was like, learning them and hoping that they knew what they were doing. And luckily, like they were a phenomenal team, such a great team. And they knew that Hydroflex housing like the back of their hand. So It was really awesome.
So why was that the case? Why were you not able to bring your own tech? Was that like a budget thing or?
It was a budget thing. So supposedly this is the most money Netflix has ever spent on a docuseries. So I think we had just drained everything. And that was it. I don't even know if they were going to hire like a Phantom tech or anything at first. And I was like, we absolutely need that. Yeah. So I just think sometimes it's mostly budget. It's generally the reason, flying people out to Miami from LA, then from Miami to the Bahamas. Yeah, I'm sure it's just, it adds up.
And so with those people, had you been told ahead of time who they were and what their experience was, or did you just kind of have to trust that they had hired someone good?
I just had to trust. I was able to talk to my tech, I think a couple days before, to tell him exactly what I wanted to come with the package. Yeah. And he told me what I was able to get with the package because it's whatever they had in Miami. And that was it. Right. Yeah, it was fully just going in blind and trusting them. And then as soon as we all got to the hotel, we had a full day to prep. And then after 5 minutes of prepping with them, I was like, oh, this is going to be great. You know,
Okay.
Complete
awesome.
relief washed over me as I watched them correctly prep the housing. It was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's when you're standing back and you're just watching, you're like, okay, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're like, oh, that doesn't go there. No.
Was that your first time shooting the Phantom underwater?
That was actually, yeah.
Yeah. How was that?
It was good. The lens was too heavy. The lens was too long, in my opinion. I didn't choose the right one. I didn't suggest the right one. I wish I could remember what we even used. But the Phantom was amazing. We shot from 800 frames per second to 1,000 frames per second.
Yeah.
The only downside is that, you don't record the whole clip, if this makes sense. Like, you have to choose a section from the clip because the file is so large. So every single take, you hear the director and the DP up there like, they're so excited. They're like, we're melting up here. And all you want to do is see it and hear about it. But you have to wait like 6 minutes for them to scrub through the clip, pick the exact points they want, export that, like save that clip, and then reset for the shot. So it was like a lot of waiting that I was not used to. Yeah. I was like, oh, wow, this is like crazy. And, you start seeing the mermaids shake because they're freezing and you're like, we're going to lose them soon. This is taking too long. But yeah, it's the results. It looks like they're suspended in time. Like, I've only gotten to watch the rough cut of this sequence like once or twice, and both times literally just tears because I could not believe I shot it. It was that moment where you're like, there's no way. Like, super, super proud moment.
And I guess for you as well, like, you don't get any of the Phantom effect while you're shooting it, or even because you wouldn't get playback either, right?
Exactly. I think once I got playback, but you couldn't tell it was playing back because it was so slow.
It was like a freeze frame.
Yeah, I think after they scrubbed, I was able to see it. But yeah, it took too long. So
yeah. So in when you're shooting that fast, you really have to know what your start and end point is, I guess. Or were you doing much tracking, or was it pretty static?
It was all push-ins and pull-outs every single shot and take, that every setup we did. So super fun challenge because, I'd start off just kind of suspended, super still. And then I'd have to kick myself off, not of a wall, just of the water, and still stay really steady, and then stop really hard and then pull back ever so slightly. So there were a lot of those shots, and it was just, I love those challenges. I think it's just so much fun. Movement underwater is like all I want to do. I don't like being a human tripod. It's just not as fun. But
no, yeah. I mean, I kind of, when I first started, it was like, I'm just happy to be here. But now, after doing it for a while, it's like, I want to do like more, like, because you're basically a Steadicam under there. You are every, you're a dolly, you're a crane, you're all the stuff. And you want to get as creative as you can with it. It's
so, so fun. I love it so much. And on those shoots with the Phantom, you have to have an insane focus puller. And Jill Maloof I think she's based in New York or Miami. She's phenomenal. She like killed every shot, never missed a beat. It was crazy.
Because that's the other thing too, right? Because depending on, because everything's going to be, I don't know how long your movement was, like, like 5 seconds or something, which then turns into a minute and a half of footage. Mm-hmm. Yeah, any micro adjustments of focus are going to be really apparent.
Oh, yeah. And take forever to get back into focus. And you're just like, I don't know. For me, that makes me like, it makes my insides hurt.
Yeah.
When I can see, it's buzzing and it just won't go back into focus. And you're like, oh, but the frame's so perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you do this thing I do this thing when I'm looking at footage, usually when I've shot it, and I'm actually physically moving my body trying to get the camera.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do the same thing. I actually did that a lot when I was pulling focus. I pulled focus for a good friend of mine, Alex, for many, many years. And when I see BTS video of me pulling, I'm like moving with the camera the whole time, hoping that my focus is going with my body.
Oh, yeah, right.
It's really funny. Yeah, what you do just to like, you're trying to make it happen with your mind,
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah. It's like, you can try and move the whole world around the frame somehow. It's amazing. So there was one project I wanted to ask you about as well, which was the Amazon commercial that you did. I forget the guy's name, Zach.
Zach King. Yeah, it was for their new Alexa product.
So talk about that, because Zach King, he's been like the king of mind-bending little skits for so long, where he'll pull things out of a television and all that sort of stuff. What was this one? What was the underwater theme of this?
So Zach and his team came to, I can't remember where they found me. I think it was through Facebook, but came to me with this idea where they really wanted a guy to be dressing for a vacation. And as he packs, the room slowly fills up with water. He's in a tropical paradise, and all of the fish posters on his wall come off in real life. And then the Alexa ball turns into a scuba diver, like waving at him. And then Zach slowly swims away. And so it was really, really fun just trying to figure out how we were going to make that happen, because he likes to do things as practical as he can to a point, and then everything else is like special effects. And it's wild because he has a whole team of guys just sitting there on computers. Like it's really cool. He's got his team like dialed in. I'm pretty sure he's been like really popular since the Vine days. Like,
that's when I knew him. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Super exciting. I knew for this that we were going to have to build a set, put it on a crane and sink it multiple times and be able to reset quickly. So that meant thinking about exactly what we're going to use as far as props and things that might need to dry quicker or get multiples of, like the sheets and everything. I knew I would need like a massive team of people with just loads of experience. So I just brought on a lot of people I knew that have been in the industry for a while and had worked on a bunch of stuff. Like we had Soda again. I had Andy Schubert as the gaffer. He's like an insane diver, underwater gaffer, land gaffer, like anything lighting. He's just like a textbook. And then we had a great marine coordinator and a great safety team. It was Rob Trussell's team. We eventually like did everything we needed to do on the pre-light day, the setup day. And then when it came to the shoot day, we tested the set trying to sync it, and it would not sync. It would always like either go to the right or one corner would go down, and it would just like take the whole thing and wobble it around. Then I think we ended up tying ropes to different parts and having people pull it to level it out. And then we ended up having guys pulling it down straight. And then I think towards the very end of all these tries, the production designer just started drilling holes in the bottom of the set to get it to like evenly sink and fill up. Yeah. And so to even like, I started dry and then I was dunked into the water with Zach so we could get the water level at the same time so they could like do CGI to it later. So Soda had to build a rig where I was kind of like, I don't know, we just had speed rail around me and I was locked in so I could steady the camera, but then be able to swim off when I'm under the water and do like a parallax around Zach and then end up pushing into him as he's swimming above me. It was all a wild process. Like it literally took a village to make that whole shot happen. And it was just one shot. And then at the end, we did do one green screen shot to make the Alexa ball turn into our scuba diver. And he had like the old school helmet on. It was really, really fun. But one of the most challenging underwater shoots as a DP I've ever done. But I've learned the most on that one.
And so that was one of those ones where it wasn't like there was a lot of setups and a lot of takes. It was really just one kind of shot that you needed.
Exactly.
But days and days of prep and most of your time is spent trying to work out how to make the whole thing actually work.
Yeah. Yeah. But Zach he's so pro. I mean, he does this stuff all the time, but he was just like, he had a great breath hold. He like nailed the shot every time, even like being underwater and not really being able to see well. It was really fun. Yeah.
No, I ended up seeing the end result, and I saw some behind the scenes too. And yeah, you're basically just hanging onto the side of this set that's being dropped into the water. And there was so many safety as well, like so many grips in the water, so many safety in the water. It was, it seemed very busy.
And we needed it. And at the end of the day, like it may have seemed like overkill at first, but seeing how many people it took to get that set to sync. Like we definitely needed all the hands.
And I think that's, I don't know, like you'd think that you dropping a set is quite a common thing in this industry. You'd think they'd know how to do it well now, but it's like every time it's different. The weight is different on the truss and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
the resistance is different.
I guess different production designers, and like some people just don't listen to you when you give them advice on how to do it. You know what I mean? Like they'll use different materials or build the whole thing out of wood. And of course that's going to be more difficult to sync.
Yeah. So how much input do you have in the pre-production?
In the pre-pro, like a good amount. Like they came to me for my expertise because they had never done an underwater one before. That was like fully underwater. So a lot, but I also, I don't have a crazy amount of experience with sets, especially sinking a set on a crane, like very little. So I also didn't want to suggest things that I wasn't 100% on. So myself, Soda, and Andy, because they have experience, just worked with the production designer just on phone calls and stuff about like certain materials they should use and everything. So the whole team, like just because of their experience alone, like that made such a difference for everyone. Every every department.
Yeah. And that's when it all really works together, is everyone's kind of working towards that same goal.
Yeah. And then when you finally get it, it's like, it's like so fun.
Yeah.
Finally, all the stress goes away.
Yeah, that's right. How many times did you actually do the dunking of the set? Was there just one take, or did you do many takes?
Oh, we dunked that set a lot. Because it was mostly dunking it, trying to get it to sink. So I don't ever think we did a full dunk more than like maybe 4 or 5 times, maybe more. I wish I had a better memory.
Yeah. And then in terms of working with the end CGI stuff, was there much that you needed to kind of match? Did you have to keep the camera moving the same direction all the time? Or
yeah, which is super difficult underwater. On land, you would have marks that you would hit exactly like the same focal length, the same height, the same, like for the parallax, the same endpoint. And I didn't have any of that underwater. I just had to go based on like, okay, I know on the right edge of my frame, that's where that cabinet ends. And then the bed frame ends on my right, so I just kind of did it like that. But going down was the hardest part, like keeping the camera completely still as it's going underwater, which, it's going to hit like the dome port, like the shield and all that. Like it's going to move. Yeah. No matter what, because we couldn't lock it in because I had to immediately just like seamlessly swim once I was under. So that was the most challenging thing. So I'm sure they had to do some like extra work there. But yeah, nailing those points was really difficult.
No, I mean, the end result looks so good. It's hard to tell where the CG and the real kind of connected.
Yeah, I think so too. Just a little bit on the surface. That's where I can really tell.
Yeah.
Like it looks real at some points and it looks really like AI
at some points. Yeah. So I know you started at Brooks with photography and then got into video. Mm-hmm. You're still shooting photography as well. Like you're still doing that these days?
I do. I think it's so much fun. I kind of I want to do it professionally, but I don't feel like I'm where the professionals are. Like if I compare my work to you, Mallory Morrison, Jamie Johnson, which are my favorites, I just feel like, I don't know, I've got a lot of room to grow. But I also do feel like my images aren't like everyone else's in a way. Where I don't use, lighting and I don't know. They're more trippy, I guess, more psychedelic.
Well, I think that's something that I know you for, is that very organic, very lo-fi, almost kind of vintage kind of look to your work, where it is very, it has grain and it has anomalies. And I think you're basically trying to put anomalies into the images to kind of make them as trippy as possible. Mm-hmm. Where did that kind of come from for you? Like, where did that style evolve? I
have a really funny story about how I think I got my style, because it switched. I just don't know if it's an appropriate story.
Let's try it.
Okay. So I had been shooting underwater for a few years, and I feel like if you look back at a lot of my images, they were fairly desaturated, still sort of psychedelic, but very desaturated. And so here's the story everyone hears. I went to Burning Man, and I was actually hired to shoot Susan Sarandon at a camp. So that was like my whole Burning Man experience.
Yeah.
And one night we had this surrealist dinner where, they had fully cooked pigs, but they had woven, or like they had bacon weaved, however you say that, wings that they had stuck into the pig. So it was like a pig with bacon wings and all these crickets riding like squirrels. And like, as we're eating, these people are throwing bugs in our soup, like crickets. And they're like, there's a bug in your soup. And we're like, what? And little did we know they were laced with acid. So, after halfway through the dinner, we start to realize it. And then they tell us. And then Susan Sarandon takes us, this like group of 10, to this room, and she's like, okay, so as many of you know, I was one of Timothy Leary's lovers. And when Timothy Leary died and got cremated, he gave a little bit of him to all of his like mistresses or lovers, I guess we'll say.
Yeah.
And so she had kept this for so long, waiting for the perfect time to kind of release him from this vial. And so, she's like, let's do this ceremony. Let's, celebrate his life and everything he's done for us. And then we were going to do this giant march through the camp. And so she made this mezcal drink. And the only reason I'm part of this is because I'm shooting it. But I took one of the drinks as well, and we're all toasting. And after we drink it, we find out we had drank Timothy Leary's ashes. And God. I personally think that's really cool because it's Timothy Leary, the godfather of just psychedelics. And I just feel like since then, that is when all of my work exploded, whether that was just me, I don't know, just thinking that's why, but it was pretty wild. Everything's been like extremely vibrant and psychedelic and super saturated in color. And it's just funny because when I tell that story to any of my friends, they're like, Jenny, you drank a dead guy. That's gross.
You're right.
I'm like, yeah, when you say it like that, yeah, but it's Timothy Leary. But yeah, I don't know. That's where I think my super psychedelic, just style came from. And just, I don't know, I feel like that's kind of like my world. I just love to see the world in a more trippy light. Like if I could just hold up diffraction sheets to my eyes, which I do often, just all the time, and see the world in like diffracted rainbows, that's just how I want to see it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's beautiful. And knowing you as I do, I think that it is so Jenny. But I think we all have this kind of, whether we know it or not, there's usually some kind of moment in our life that has, it's like a turning point. It's like a switch has been flipped where we're like, oh, I'm going to do it this way because it seems to make more sense.
Yeah, and it just makes you feel a certain way. That moment you're retouching a photo and you're like, holy shit, this is it. This is my style. Like, this makes me feel like something I would create. Yeah. And
I think the realization a lot of the time is accepting what your style is. I feel like a lot of the time, especially for me with my career, I felt like I had been trying to have someone else's style for so long that I was like, I love what they do. I want to do it how they do it. And then it wasn't until I kind of just after a few years looked back and went, you know what, I don't do it like them, but I do it this way. And I quite like the way I do it. And when I'm retouching stuff or shooting stuff and I'm like, oh yeah, that's my thing. There it is. That's my voice or my touch in there. And I feel this kind of self-acceptance, I guess. Whereas before I'd be like, no, this is not turning out how I wanted it to.
Totally. It's a good feeling. And it's also a really great feeling when you have such a specific style, people immediately know that that's your work when they're like scrubbing through, or doom scrolling, and they're like, oh, that's a Brett Stanley, or oh, that's a Jenny Baumert for sure. That's awesome. I think when you've come that far to like finally develop a style that is stuck with you.
The other thing that I've kind of realized too is that, previously, before I kind of realized I had a style, I would shoot all the time, and I would shoot stuff that I didn't really care about, because I was trying to find that thing. Mm-hmm. And now I only shoot what I want to shoot. People will be like, why don't you shoot this thing? And I'm like, nah, that's not what I do.
Yeah.
I've kind of found my little home, my little niche, and I feel comfortable there.
It's a good place to be. I mean, I feel like, yeah, you're just building sets and creating worlds. That's totally your style. And you have in my opinion, a very specific lighting style as well. Like, I immediately know your image when I see it.
Yeah.
Or an
Yeah.
image of yours. Yeah.
And same with yours, like as soon as I see your stuff, there are kind of hallmarks, I guess, or, kind of tells of a Jenny Baumert. and it is that kind of, yeah, like you say, it's like a saturated color. There's usually some sort of refraction rainbow going on in there somewhere.
I use a lot of filters. I like to use a lot of like actual diffraction sheets. Like if you go into any like high school scientific magazine where the teacher needs to order a bunch of stuff, you can find some really cool stuff to shoot with in those magazines. And they have just like tubes and rolls of like different grades of diffraction, and they'll all do different things to light. And then not only hitting light, but when it hits on every part of the surface, our world is constantly shifting and changing underwater, which is why it's so amazing. So you're every single moment is completely different from the first. Like every second is completely different. It's pretty amazing.
So how do you approach that if you're going into a still or a video shoot and you want to use these diffraction sheets and all that sort of stuff? Are you literally just holding it in front of the dome of the camera, or are you attaching things to the lens itself?
Yeah, I'm attaching things to the lens, which doesn't always work out in your favor. A lot of times you'll forget that if you zoom, it's going to like push the filter off and then it's just going to be in your dome. Then you have to go all the way back to shore and you have to take it out. So it can be a pain. Usually if I'm doing a shoot and they really, really want to use some like filters, that's the last thing we do. We get all of the important stuff out of the way and then go with the filters. But I generally just tape it on, or I have covered the dome port on the inside with the sheets before, and that's worked out. But yeah, with stuff like that, you can't take it away. You can add it in, which, we don't want to do. We want to capture it in camera, but sometimes it's just too much and you might, ruin the shot completely.
Do you ever do anything outside the dome in terms of refraction?
I've tried a prism outside the dome once, a really large one, but it only works on like a long lens.
Yeah.
And we use so many wide lenses underwater. It's kind of, it's more challenging actually.
Yeah. The only time I've ever used a crystal or a prism was on a 100mm lens.
Yeah. That's like,
and it was the Hydroflex housing, and I'm holding the housing and holding the crystal in front of the lens. And it was basically like a sniper type thing. Like our talent was kind of moving in the water, and I'm trying to find her and hold this crystal. And at the same time, my AC is losing his mind because he's trying to pull focus through the crap that is coming off this crystal. But when it hit, like when he managed to hit that tack sharp focus, it looked incredible.
Oh yeah.
But it was so difficult.
It is. Yeah. Especially, I can't believe you were holding that housing with one hand and the prism with the other.
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
No. And I mean, me, I kind of do things, I'll just, kind of go with it and see what happens. But yeah, it was kind of like, I don't think this is going to work, guys. And then I saw the footage and I was like, oh, wow. Okay.
Totally works.
Yeah. Nice. and kudos to Mike, my AC on that, because he managed to pull focus basically through a sniper.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was incredible. In terms of like inspiration and all that sort of stuff, because I know you do a lot of music videos, you do a lot of kind of documentary projects, all that sort of stuff. Where do you kind of get your inspiration from in terms of what sort of shots to get and how to get these shots and, lighting styles and stuff? What kind of influences you?
Honestly, I get most of my ideas when I'm outside, like jogging, hiking, riding my bike. I will just get ridiculous ideas that I have no idea how I would accomplish them. And then I can just like do testing, or I don't know, just keep trying to draw lighting diagrams to see if anything makes sense. I go back and like just kind of YouTube any underwater work that's ever been done and like try to see if there's behind the scenes of that. How did they get this shot? more times than not, they use way less lights than you'd think, you know? Just some
Yeah.
complicated shots that you see. It's like, oh, we just had one light outside of the water. And it's like, what? Yeah. So inspiration, I don't know. I think it just from other people that I admire that do underwater work.
You also do a lot of music videos. Where are people finding you to do these? Are they just kind of seeing your other work and then wanting you to kind of come in and kind of have the same approach and the same kind of treatment?
Yeah. Either word of mouth nowadays, now that I've been doing it for a while, but mostly Instagram, surprisingly. Probably
Oh, right.
like 80% of my work comes from social media, just someone seeing my work on there. And then recently, I've been doing a lot of short films. And with those short films come a lot of screenings. And then once people see you at the screening and you're speaking afterwards, you get approached a lot to do their projects. So that's been a big help as well.
Well, you just won a pretty decent award as well, right, for cinematography?
Yeah, the second one for Unborn for cinematography I think it was for short form at Cannes, the short form film festival. Or film
Right.
Fest. Trying to remember exactly what it was called.
So talk about that project, because Unborn was visually, it was beautiful. It was such a striking lighting style and kind of striking visuals. Just talk about that project for me.
That project was brought to me by Sasha Spear and her journey of motherhood, trying to become a mother. She has such a strong vision, and for some reason we read each other's souls when we work together, even though we did not know each other before this project. I think she said she had been a fan of mine on Instagram for a couple years and then finally had this project to be able to do with me. Yeah, just hearing her story kind of actually inspired the ocean parts of that shoot. So it was half in a pool shot at your studio, and then the other half was shot at Catalina, which was extremely difficult, super cold, crazy current. She's just fighting all the elements, but just her pain and journey really just helped me tell the story. I don't know, just feeling how she felt helped me, helped guide my movements, I guess, and direction for her.
How much input do you have in projects like this in terms of what the visuals end up looking like? Are people coming to you with sort of fully fleshed storyboards and even maybe previs, or are they sort of coming to you and it's a collaboration of, I have this idea, how would we sort of make it look?
It's almost always collaboration. I love the few projects that I get where a director has a full vision lined up and all these references. That's really nice when you just want to really give them exactly what they want. But collaborations are also it's the best opportunity for you to keep developing your style, to get to try to do things you've been wanting to do and didn't have the budget for. But yeah, with Sasha specifically, she fully trusts me, and just especially in the underwater realm, she just lets me go. She's like, I know whatever you set up is going to work for this. So just full trust. And I love that. It makes you feel good, and it gives you the confidence to just go in with your team, set it up, and get it all shot the way they see it in their head.
Yeah. Have you worked with people, say directors that have done multiple projects underwater? And if so, have you kind of worked with them in terms of trying to change the visuals every time and trying to push the boundaries a bit?
That's a great question. I don't know if I have worked with a director that has done a bunch of underwater. I hope I'm not forgetting somebody. Yeah, I think most people that I work with are like, this is the first time I've done underwater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because what I find with directors, and one thing I love about it is maybe it's their first time shooting underwater, and you kind of get a picture up and you show them what's about to happen, and they're like, oh my God, this is amazing. That, they're so easily pleased, I feel, in terms of, it looks amazing. Whereas for us, we've probably kind of seen everything. And for me, I kind of had this little frustration of, it looks good, but it's been done so many times. I would love to, can we try and do something that hasn't been done before, but I feel like people are so new to it, and they just love everything.
That's super true. Yeah. And like, I feel the same way. There's so many times where I'm like, but if we did this, it would be the most cinematic moment. It's just also executing the thing that we want to do becomes really hard because we usually don't have the crew for it or, you know, the equipment. Like, so many times I've wanted to build a rig, and I'm going to do it eventually, where I can sit with the camera and be put in and out of the water, turned every way, almost like those training things for astronauts where you're in the circle and you can go 360 degrees every way up and down. I want something like that kind of rig. Somehow I will figure this out with a key grip. But
I kind of want to be you kind of want to be attached to the Hydra head.
Yeah, but like have way more movement. Like, you know, just,
I think there's those sorts of things too. And because we spend a lot of time just sitting at the bottom of a pool, waiting for stuff to happen, I think we do spend a lot of time kind of fantasizing and looking around and going, oh, what if I try this?
Absolutely. The whole time.
Do you have like a little like mental notebook of ideas you want to try?
I do, but then I don't remember them.
Yeah. At the time.
And then they'll come back up when I'm underwater and I'm like, oh yeah. But I mean, I have notes literally everywhere. So it's hard to keep them together in my phone, in different notebooks. Like I have so many ideas for films I want to shoot underwater, for different photo series. And I really want to make this year the year that I like start focusing on more personal projects. That way I can like show people what is possible underwater. Like you can move like this or make a pool look like this, you know?
Oh no, exactly. Yeah. I think what's needed out there is definitely some proof of concept. Just to get people to go, oh, okay. Yeah. I can see I can weave that into a story or, you know, put that into a commercial or whatever. Yeah. Jenny, thank you so much. This has been really amazing. I've known you for many years, but even being able to get to ask these questions, I've learned so much more. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.
Thanks for listening, everyone. And as always, if you like the podcast, please subscribe, review, and share. If you'd like to support with the production of these episodes, you can purchase our very cool merchandise at theunderwaterpodcast.com. We've got branded coffee mugs, stickers, beer cozies, and posters featuring our amazing illustration and logo by Joe Hodino. If you'd like to connect with us or learn more about our guests, you can reach us at theunderwaterpodcast.com or on Instagram. We also have a Facebook group where you can discuss the episodes and even get your questions answered by our guests. There's a link to it in the show notes. Also, don't forget about Waterproof magazine, showcasing the best in underwater art. Read it online or purchase a print edition at waterproofmag.org. You can learn more about my underwater photography workshops and mentoring at brettstanley.com or Brett S Photo on Instagram. The Underwater Podcast is presented and produced by me, Brett Stanley, and our music is Neo by Oh Boy. Keep creating, everyone. I'll see you in the water.